Hey guys, what's happening? Hope you're having a great day today. Thanks for watching and coming back and all that stuff. And today I'm going to talk about a photo that I took in London. So let me just show you the photo. Here it is. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about creating more of a nighttime look in this photo. It's not a complete day to night because this was, it was basically right around sunset-ish. The exposure is kind of bright. I was shooting brackets. I didn't really want to make an HDR. This was actually shooting through glass, which I don't always recommend, especially when the light does get low, because you'll start getting reflections in the glass. Now there's a skirt you can buy. It's like a rubber thing you put around your lens. You can attach it to the glass that you're shooting through to get rid of those reflections. I don't have one. I always forget to get one, and then I get somewhere like London and I need it, and I'm like, damn it. So I was shooting a lot more when it was a little bit brighter because I knew reflections were going to show up. So that's one tip about these kind of things. The second tip is I love to shoot skylines, and people are generally always thinking about, well, what's the best view I can get? Let me go to the highest building so I can see everything. And I tend to be of the opinion of, let's go to the second highest building so that I can have the highest building in my photo. So the highest building being the Shard in London. The building we went to, and I don't actually know if it's the second highest, but it's pretty damn high. I don't actually know what the building is called. They call it the walkie-talkie. It looks like a walkie-talkie, but as you can see, it's positioned almost directly across the River Thames from the Shard. And so I was there with a couple of my buddies, and we were shooting. And anyway, as the light started to come on, that's when it's kind of go time, right? So I was firing away, but what I wanted to do is create the look of having shot this later at night when the city's fully lit up. So I turned it into that. And I gotta be honest, I threw just a ton of filters at this. I used 15 filters on this photo. So I'm gonna go ahead and break it down for you, and let's get that started right now. Okay, so here's our base photo that you've already seen, right? So the first thing I did is I went to tone. And by the way, in these 15 filters, I used a couple of them twice just because sometimes you gotta mask things in, and I do a fair bit of that in this photo. Sometimes you gotta mask things in just to get, specific areas looking the way you want, right? So first thing I did was tone. You can see that contrast, it was completely lacking because it was fairly bright image and there's no contrast in it. So contrast, a little smart tone, and then I played with highlights and shadows and that sort of thing. And already, I think that's an improved photo, but, obviously I got a lot to do. So I next went into color temperature, and that was, if I take that away, if you look at it, to me it's kind of bluish, but it's got a lot of that green kind of tint, especially like in that center section at the bottom of the Shard and that section right over there. So color temp to me helped that because I moved temperature a tiny bit, but the tint I moved a lot, as you can see, and that really, it's basically you're taking the green tones and moving them toward the magenta, which is what I do all the time, right? Cross-processing was my next filter, and I used Seattle, which I used in a recent video, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 videos back about shooting a sunset. It's great for sunsets, and I'm not trying to necessarily emulate a sunset here, but I am trying to get more of those kind of tones. This is London, so it's generally kind of overcast. It's not a big sunset destination, as I said in another video. But that color, I think, works really well. The thing to be aware of is when you're adding pink tones like that in Seattle, these orange kind of areas that are kind of orange-yellow, like the top of the Shard and this bridge, are going to start picking up that pink color. And so you want to manage that later, which I'll show you. Saturation and vibrance was next. And this is where I'm kind of like, ooh, I'm turning this into something I really like, and I kind of get excited because the colors are starting to look good, and now I'm thinking, okay, I'm basically at the point of just needing to manage the light a little bit better and the color, and if I can get to that point, I feel like it's kind of easy, right? So, I say easy. I spent probably 30, 45 minutes in total farting around with this photo, just trying to get to the final look, and in fact, I had 2 or 3 versions of this before I actually got to this final one that you've seen, and so I tend to iterate when it gets a little complicated, and we're using 15 filters. It's just complicated, right? So it's not hard, it's just a lot of steps. A polarizing filter is next because the sky was a little too bright, right? So already you can see with the first 5 or so filters, we've gone from what looks like a foggy, overcast, late afternoon shot, which actually was a kind of somewhat foggy, overcast, late afternoon shot, and now you're kind of saying, ooh, that's blue hour. And by the way, sparkly, twinkly lights in cities at blue hour, that's like the best stuff ever. I just love it. Okay, so next was split color warmth. And that's very subtle. I don't even know if you can tell, but it's just a little bit of warmth. And I don't know if you've noticed, but right over here, there's a couple of little shapes you can see in the sky. Those are the reflections I'm talking about. Now, they pretty much go away through a couple of other things that I do, I think. But we'll have to go back. I was going to say, remind me to bring that up again at the end. But I'll have to remind myself if I can. But that's the issue when you're shooting through glass and the lights start to come on, because the lights are on behind you wherever you are shooting through the glass as well, unless you own the place and you can say, hey, turn out the lights or whatever. This is a public viewing deck and it's crowded and I'm squished in there with a bunch of photographers and tourists and other people. So nobody's turning off the lights for little old me. Next was HSL, and that was taking down the blue a little bit, as you can see. I don't think I did any hue, maybe a little bit of luminance too. So that's something to think about. Let me turn that off. Pretty blue, and I love blue. And we'll get some blue back here in a little bit, but you do run the risk of everything just becoming super blue and looking like all you did is just take the color temp and just drag it to the left. And I don't want to do that, and I don't want my photo to look like that. So sometimes I'll go as I'm working through a photo, and I'll say, ooh, I need to tweak the blues a little bit because, like I said, I just don't want to overdo the blue. So that's kind of what I did. So it took down some of that blue look. Now this is a big step, the next one, adjustable gradient. It made it in my filter list of the top 10 filters because it's amazing. And there you go. I mean, that's a pretty big difference in terms of the light. So there's the before and the after. And what I'm getting at, as you can see here, let me turn it off again. Brighter sky because it was late afternoon, right? Sunset-ish, whatever time of day. But the sky's kind of bright and the foreground's kind of dark. And so I want to reposition that or rebalance that a little bit. And so that's what this did for me. So in the top, as you can see, I dragged the exposure down, added some contrast, and did the same thing in the bottom. And let me show you the orientation. I compressed that a little bit and stuck it right about there because, I just want to make sure that I'm brightening that foreground and darkening the sky, right? So it worked out pretty well, I think. Let me show you one more time, before and after. That actually darkened the shard too. Now you could go in and mask that or unmask it from the shard, but I think it actually works in this case. It helps set the shard off from that background a little bit, which I think works. And conveniently, by the way, where this orientation is, right around there is where the lights start getting heavier in the shard. So it makes sense that it would be darker above that because it's little spots of light, whereas where that gradient sits, this section of the shard here is where there's a lot of lights. It looks as though it's ringed in light. So kind of works for me. Okay, so I was playing with soft glow, which is my next filter, and what I was trying to do is just experiment. One of the things I like about this photo is there are these clouds right over here. They're a little bit bright, and if you know soft glow, like I use it on street lights and that sort of thing, because it'll give them a little pop of light. And so I said, wonder what it'll do to those clouds. And there you go. To me, it almost looked like the shard is smoking, like it's giving off some smoke. Not like on fire, but almost like it's puffing on a cigarette or something. So there's the before and the after. It's just a tiny little thing, but I just kind of liked it. I don't know. I just kind of liked it. So that's why I did that. Image radiance, and that was just giving a little bit more contrasty look, a little darker, a little moodier. And what I'm going for here, you saw the final result, is definitely kind of moody, maybe dramatic. I don't know what the word is, but image radiance, I think, does a great job of that. So again, before and after image radiance. Helps to darken, seems to add a little bit of contrast. I just like it. So that was that. Okay, we're on the downhill slide here. So structure was next. All I did here on structure the first time, I used it twice, is increase structure, and then I painted it into a few spots in the center of the photo. The stuff that I consider the focal areas of the photo. And that's something about structure, is in the past what I used to do is just paint it onto everything except maybe the sky and the water in this photo. But I've gotten now to where I'll paint it in more selectively, because the truth is I don't really want to add structure to these distant parts of London or the foreground, because the structure is going to create a little bit of crunch, and I don't want the viewer's eye to sort of go that way. I really only care about this stuff in terms of drawing your eye to it, of the stuff that I've painted the structure filter into here. And that's because, to me, kind of that's the focal point. It's like the cityscape and the shard. Everything else is just adding framing, for lack of a better word. And so that's kind of how I think about that. And this is Jim rambling, by the way. So that's what I did with structure. And then what I did is I copied that mask. You can just say structure, mask, copy. And then I added structure again. And I just came in here and I said structure, mask, paste, which is right there. And then I also hit invert because I wanted the opposite, because here I did negative structure. So negative structure smooths it out, and I added a little bit of boost. You've heard me talk about this a ton, but there's the before and the after. Let me show you the mask. It's basically just an invert of the other mask, right? And so what this does for me is it sort of it does soften up the other stuff. And for me, it's enhancing the mood because it's looking more like a fog has settled on the city, even though in the base photo, I mean, it's kind of not muggy, kind of smudgy looking, a little bit overcast, maybe is the best word. It's not really fog, but haze, maybe that's a word. I don't know what to call it, but it's there, whatever it is. And I'm sort of adding blur to it with that negative structure, just creating that extra bit of softness, because again, to me, it's kind of a dreamy Blue Hour cityscape thing. I don't know what you call it. That's what I did. So, okay, so we're real close to finishing here. Golden Hour is the next one, and in this case, I just popped Golden Hour in a couple of spots. Usually what I'll do with Golden Hour is, especially on a sunset, or if I've got nice warm tones, I'm kind of accentuating them, I'll just add it to the entire photo. But in this case, I wanted to brush it in. So once again, I got my my brush, and I just brushed it into these spots. I wanted it here on the shard and on the lights kind of below the shard and across the front there. I didn't actually want it on the bridge, even though that does have some warm tones, because it was starting to look a bit too pink. And truth is, I think that's bright enough, and the color of that bridge being kind of yellow-orange set against all that blue, your eye's going to go that way naturally anyway. It kind of goes there, and you see the street curving and all that. So I just said I'm going to leave it alone and not put Golden Hour there. So I just put Golden Hour on those areas in the center. It's kind of subtle. There's the before, there's the after. It's a little bit of pop of color. I don't know how well you can tell in the video. 2 filters left. So HSL, here's where I just had a look at the photo and I said, you know, at the top of the shard, if you go back to the original, it's really yellow. It's becoming pinky, kind of orange now. And this street is kind of yellow, a little bit of orange-y. And so all I did is I just went and corrected that. So I went into, I think hue first. I changed the hue of the red tones. I didn't touch saturation, yeah. And then I increased the luminance. So if you just look at the top of the shard, and if you look at this bridge over here, so here's the before, top of the shard, kind of pink-orange, and the bridge kind of pink-orange. And so with the hue and luminance adjustments to the red, I got it to be a bit more natural looking, especially the top of the shard I think looks very naturally yellow, which is really how it looks. And the bridge I think is improved as well. Now if I didn't like the bridge or I wanted to separate them, I could just add HSL again and do a different hue and luminance adjustment there if I wanted, but I thought it worked fine. So, you know, at that point I was at 14 filters and I was like, I need to be done with this thing. And to be done, I just slapped a vignette on it. By the way, you know what? I just reminded myself to go back. I believe it was this structure adjustment. Yeah, so there it is. When I went negative structure, you can still see those little bits of squares, which are lights behind me through the glass that are just reflecting. And then I even had my lens pretty much pressed up against the glass. But, you know, the thing is like, if the glass isn't positioned perfect for your composition, you got to pull your lens a little bit and turn, which is what I had to do. So I picked up reflections. But that negative structure, when it smooths out all that bit, if you look, I'm going to turn it on, and those just kind of fade out, right? So you can actually still see them a little bit, but I think if you didn't know they were there, you wouldn't even actually see them. I could also perhaps go into the clone and stamp tool or the eraser tool and play around with it, but this video is long enough, so we're not doing that. So vignette was my last touch. There's the pre-vignette, which I liked. And then there's the post-vignette, which I actually like more. It does really center the eye, which is what vignettes do. And then the inner light, I think, helps. It really pops that center. And to me, the center of the photo is really the focus. You've got the shard and you've got some lights there. And like I said, that bridge will kind of draw your attention a little bit. But there it is before Vignette, and there it is. That inner light, I think, really helps. So there we go. Here's a before and after. And, you know, it's not blue hour. The lights were on, thankfully, but it's, you know, late afternoon. I think the sun had set. So it's maybe like 5 o'clock or something, because this was winter. And after. So now, you know, we've created a dramatic blue hour cityscape out of something that was looked like more of almost of a daytime shot. And that's how it works. So I hope it helps, my friends. I appreciate you watching very much. If you've got any questions, boom, hit me with a comment. I do my best to reply to all those. And if I miss one, I'm sorry. I do try. The weird thing is like YouTube sometimes will send me an email and say, so-and-so left a comment. You know, it'll send me the comment in email. And then sometimes I'll go back and look at a video, and there'll be comments there, and I never got an email about it. So if I don't respond to a comment, it's usually because I didn't get an email and I didn't know. Anyway, not that that matters. That's it, friends. Thank you. Subscribe, like, share with your friends. If you appreciate this kind of stuff, let me know with comments. And that's it. I'm out of here. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Take care, and adios.